Well, welcome everybody. Obviously, you can't hit the Google search button without seeing something online about grants, stimulus, broadband, digital divide, digital equity. It is all over the place, which, from my perspective, actually, and I know Al would probably agree, is a great thing. The fact that we're talking about this, things that I know we've talked about for years and years and years, that's now become everyday language. That's progress to me. That's a huge progress. But for the people that are listening, let's try to make sure they understand what's even the difference. Like we hear stimulus, we hear infrastructure package, we hear grants. What's the difference in all these
A lot of
things?
confusion, Nick.
I know it's just
I have no idea.
There's a lot of money out there, but what does it mean?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So essentially, prior to the pandemic, by and large, what you had were what we call traditional grant opportunities, and that the main difference is that the bulk of the legwork that somebody who's applying for a grant is going to need to do for a traditional opportunity is going to be on the front end. So they're going to need to have the project idea in mind, and it's going to have to be comprehensive and include the products that they're looking for to meet, in the case of K-12 education, the student achievement demands that they might have. So usually what you're looking at for a traditional grant, a lot of lead time, a lot of prep time, getting the team together, making sure that everybody is writing the parts of the narrative that they need to write, that you're getting quotes from vendors that are going to make sense for a budget narrative, because that's going to be an important part of it. You're going to have other attachments like resumes, who's going to be, part of the team that's going to execute that grant. In a K-12 space, right? If you're trying to work on after-school programming, who's going to be the head of that after-school programming? Who's the person that's going to be, with the kids in the classroom, actually delivering on that comprehensive project that you're talking about? And then, there's some state, federal spending restrictions on traditional grant opportunities, that you might be aware of. Supplement, not supplant, you may have heard in the past. That's something that really that's language of that traditional grant opportunity. And then usually for traditional grants, pre-award costs are not allowed. For stimulus, that kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing.
A good
Everything,
wrench, though, right?
A good wrench, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's brought about because of an emergency, right? COVID-19. Anybody who knows anybody who works in a school, who sends their kids to school, can think back to March 13th, 2020, and it was the apocalypse for all intents and purposes, right? Kids are home, 2 weeks turns into 2 months, turns into going on 2 years now, for some kids who are super high risk. So the stimulus funding really flipped the script. A lot of that pre-award preparation, that money was sent to the schools, and a lot of that kind of reportage and verbiage and justification came or is coming on the back end. So rather than get all your ducks in a row, prepare the application, have that budget justification before you apply for that award, the stimulus grant funding is, we understand this is an emergency. This is the federal government and state governments talking now. We understand this is an emergency. We understand that you need this money. We're going to give you this money, and then everything's going to be on the back end. So you're going to tell us why you made the purchases you made, right? Under some fairly flexible allowances in the K-12 space. And sure, similar to state and local government. But that's, in a nutshell, that's the bulk of the difference. So, traditional grants, pre-award costs, not allowed. Stimulus grants, pre-award costs could be allowed. In ESSER for K-12 education, you could pre-award costs back to March 13th, 2020. You can reimburse some of the purchases that you made right at that start. If a school is really aggressive in identifying, like, hey, these kids need Chromebooks, and we can't wait until the stimulus money comes in, and they had some money in their budget, they provided those Chromebooks to those students, then that can be reimbursed with these ESSER dollars. You don't typically see that in traditional grants. So I think a lot of the confusion stemmed from that.